Hey guys, Danny Gustin with Danny Gustin Fitness Podcast. We have our newest addition to the team, Francisco. How do you pronounce your last name?
Ulloa.
Ulloa.
Yeah, there you go. See,
There we go. Ulloa. All right. Francisco Ulloa. Francisco came aboard last week. Francisco is a personal trainer through the American Council of Exercise.
Yes.
Did I get it?
Yeah, American
Right?
Council of
ACE.
Exercise.
Yeah. College or council?
Council.
Council, that's right. ACE. ACE is one of the gold standards of personal training. Francisco worked as a personal trainer closer to the city for about a year now, and he was looking to take his career to the next level and recently applied here, and we happened to be looking for trainers, and so here we are, right? We brought him aboard, and boy, am I happy we did. We got to learn more about Francisco through this podcast today, how he became a personal trainer, some of his experiences in school that stood out to him, like anatomy class, working with cadavers, how when he really started to build his confidence as a personal trainer through some cool client experiences, and then also kind of taking things a step back to Francisco's experience being a more introverted individual, some of the things that influenced that, some in his childhood, some of those things painful, and so we got a little raw near the end of the podcast today, and I appreciate Francisco being brave enough to do that with us, so thank you again. But I think you guys are going to love this podcast, and you're going to love getting to know Francisco a little bit better. Francisco?
Yes.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So it's so important for me to introduce our personal trainers for a number of reasons. One, there's a QR code with our podcast up in the front. And a lot of our members, it's actually been kind of cool, Nico. You know this, right? Over time, members will just be working out and then all of a sudden just show the podcast is up on their phone or something like that, which is super cool, right? We're obviously not a big podcast, but that's the fact that we're making a difference in people's lives, even in a small way. Even if it's just to entertain them while they work out is pretty awesome. But because of that, members in our club, right? So a little background for those watching who don't know, I operate my business and our personal training team out of an Anytime Fitness. And so we have our personal training clientele, but we also have the gym members here too, right? And so they'll come up and in some ways they're learning about us when we've introduced Josh or Ryan or Tina, obviously Nico here. They get to learn more about us, right? And a lot of the times when people are in the club, they're shopping for trainers, right? They're trying to get a sense for who is each person, right? And that even applies to online. If someone looks us up, they might look up Danny Gustin Fitness, but if they see that, hey, reviews from Francisco, reviews from Josh. So anything that can give you guys exposure to get people to know you, I just think is so important, not only for you as you look to build your business, but for our members and our clients to get to know you better. So I appreciate you coming on, and I have to give you your kudos because we hired you last Wednesday.
Yeah, I think last Wednesday.
And then I like maybe a day later, I'm like, hey, do you want to come on the podcast? And you probably thought I was joking at first. I'm like, no, for real, we're going to do it. So you're just jumping right into the deep end. So I love it. So I wanted to start with what experiences led you to becoming a personal trainer, right? So we were talking just a moment ago in the break room with Josh about, different personal training certifications. Josh was joking about not being certified. He is certified. Although that's an unfortunate issue in personal training, right? I'd like to say that doesn't happen, but it does. In fact, even one of my family friends tried to do personal training at a gym, not in the area, and she asks the guy, hey, are you certified? And he goes, I'm certifiable. What? And I could go on a total rant about that. I hate that. It is funny, but I hate that is a thing attached to our profession, and that's why I'm so passionate about us bringing the service we do,
Right.
the quality product. I know, right? Anyways, so I don't want to belabor that point. So what experiences led to you becoming a personal trainer?
So I'll probably jump around a little bit here and there. So I remember one of the first times working out. I turned 16. Same day, I signed up for the gym on my birthday. I remember like even the lady at the desk was like, "Oh, happy birthday!" I'm like, "Yeah, thanks." So I just like got in there. I didn't even know what I was doing. I just like walk in. I'm just like, all right, I see dumbbells. And just start going at it.
I've seen people bicep curl.
Curls is like the first thing.
Right?
That definitely, yeah.
Leg press?
Yeah, leg press.
Biceps.
Yeah.
All done. That's it. I was going really hard in the weight room, and I just remember like way more often than not, I would go really hard that like I kind of see my vision start going like black a little bit. I'm just like,
That's cool.
Which
I
is,
mean, it's impressive on one end that you're trying mentally
right.
tough enough to push yourself to that degree, but maybe counterproductive.
Yeah, it was very counterproductive. It was wrong for me to do, but I mean, I really enjoy that part of it. It's just like going really hard, and best part of me, my favorite way of training is weight training, and I just really love going hard. There was a time I was like, this was in like kindergarten. I was like 5 years old. I was a very competitive kid. That is basically when I learned that I was very competitive.
Me too.
I was
More competitive than you.
better be careful. We were. There was two classes. It was my kindergarten class, and I think like a grade above me was first graders. My cousin was in the other class. He was a year older than me.
Okay.
And our teacher was like, "All right, we're gonna do a plank challenge. Everyone."
Oh, in grade school?
Yeah.
Did you ever do something like that? In grade school? A plank challenge?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah. So she was like, "All right, we're gonna everyone hands and feet, and we're gonna go see how long everyone can go." And I was one of like, I was like three other people who went the longest. I don't remember how long I went. Probably like a couple minutes. I remember everyone just giving out one at a time. The person next to me, I was like that. They dropped. I'm just like, this is really hard. I was like shaking.
Yeah.
But my cousin got in my face. He's like, come on. I'm like, yeah.
You were being trained, right?
Yeah, well,
Coached.
I was. I was. And then we had a little. I felt so cool. After
Yeah.
everyone dropped, and there was a few of us. We had a little prize. The teacher was like, "Come with me to the teacher's lounge." I'm like, "Yes, what do we get?" And it was slices of apple. That's it. But but I felt so like at the time I felt so cool. I was like walking back to class, and I was like walking like that. I'm like, I did it.
Yeah, dude, that's odd. I mean, you probably tell girls about that on like first dates,
No,
right?
no.
Like something you should know about me in elementary school. I held a plank longer than most of the kids in my class. So, but you use this experience, you know, working out for the first time, kind of getting almost to a place of blacking out.
Yeah.
Right. The person at the front desk says happy birthday, 16th birthday. You fall back on this experience in grade school, elementary school, where you were pushing yourself, kind of getting coached by your cousin.
Yeah, pretty
Right?
much. Just,
Okay.
like really hyping me up.
So almost just some experiences here and there, kind of laying the groundwork of, you know, leading to that point. I can see that.
Another thing. So back to my competitiveness. Me and my old high school friends, I think it was me that threw the idea of like, let's just do some boxing. Like we were at a bonfire. I'm like, I have some gloves at home. I could just like bring them next time. And my brother, I think like that week, he got a heavy bag. He hung it up. We had it hung up in the basement. I'm like, I really want to see how far I can go with this. And I asked him, I'm like, do you know anything? Well, he really didn't know anything, but he showed me a video of our YouTube channel. I don't know if you heard Shane Faison. No? So,
Shane Faison?
Shane Faison.
Okay.
Fight Tips. That's his channel name.
Fight tips. Is he blonde?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I do know who you're talking about.
He's a kickboxer. At the time, his
Yeah.
videos were really popular. That's when I started learning like millions of views here and there. I watched his videos like how to do like just a simple jab, 1, 2, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then I was just like really going at the heavy bag. Of course, I was like stiff at as I was learning, but like more and more I was getting better at it. And
It's kind of cool that you're young enough, right? You're 22,
yeah,
right? that you grew up with this sort of DIY aspect of YouTube, right? Like you could just actually, if you want to learn to box, you may not become an elite boxer from YouTube, but you can get pretty far just putting in the time and having some expert guidance, right? And that's so cool that you grew up with that.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm jealous of that. Who knows? I might not even used it in that way, but it is cool that you had that. So we were starting this podcast by joking about being certified or not. So you're ACE certified,
Yeah.
right? And that's the American
Council of Exercise.
Okay. So how did you end up choosing ACE as your certification?
So at the time, this was 2021, I think. I was signing up for classes. I was like, what am I interested in? I was going through on Moraine Valley website. I was checking out classes. Fitness classes popped up. I'm like, this is kind of cool. Or health classes.
Okay, in Moraine Valley Community College, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I signed up for a few classes here and there. I read the description. I'm like, this seems interesting. I signed up for like 3 classes.
So it wasn't a personal training course yet. It was just fitness classes?
No, it was. I was just reading as I was going, like, this seems interesting, because there was a fitness program. I just didn't know.
Oh, okay.
I got a call from the fitness coordinator like a few days later. She's like, hey, I noticed you signed up for some of these classes. We do have a fitness program. Are you interested in taking these classes? I'm like, yeah, what's this about? And she's like, well, if you go through these classes, you get ACE certified, which is the gold standard of personal training. And from there, I took all the classes. I graduated in like, I think, a year and a half.
Okay. So tell me more about that. So, because this is, I love hearing about stories where people, again, kind of going back to why I'm irritated with, some of the lack of regulation in our profession, right? We hold ourselves to an extremely high standard here, but that isn't always the case. And, so everyone's probably heard a horror story of a personal trainer not being certified, or maybe the club they work for just created some sort of 1 week, hey, while you're getting onboarded, we'll create our own personal training certification, right? Or I've even heard of Groupon certifications. Like I remember someone criticizing me. I went to the National Personal Training Institute, which was a bit more extensive. It's like a trade school for personal training. And I spent almost $6,000-$7,000 to do that. And I remember someone laughing at me because they're like, I just spent like $200 doing my Groupon certification. Why'd you spend all that much money? I'm like, I feel like I made the right decision, but right now I'm annoyed that you spent $200. In hindsight, he obviously, he didn't stick with the profession and probably wasn't a very good cert. But it's interesting to hear stories like this where, no, there are ways that people can differentiate. And if you hear a story like this, you realize someone is taking it seriously. Someone, did put some time, energy, money into this process. It wasn't just like something they did on a weekend or something like that, right? So she tells you ACE is one of the gold standards of personal training. So it was ACE's course, or was it like a course through the college that was sponsored through ACE, or how did that work?
Yeah, I think it was the classes that were sponsored through ACE.
Okay, interesting.
And
it was 1 semester, 2 semesters?
It was like 4 or 5 semesters. I took a bunch of classes. I think it was like 10 classes total.
Okay.
To get certified from the fitness trainer program. It wasn't certified as an ACE trainer because you had to take a test for that certificate.
Okay.
But in school, so one of the first classes I remember taking was musculoskeletal anatomy class.
Okay.
And right away I was like, this is really cool. At first we were learning like the bones and then the muscles, the landmarks, anatomy, what the actions of the muscles.
Yeah.
And I was just like hooked from like the first day. I'm like, I really enjoy this. And I remember me and my brother like to mess around, like we like to wrestle.
Yeah.
And I remember
brothers.
Like the first 2 or 3 weeks, and we were studying the shoulder girdle and I think shoulder joint.
Okay.
And I was like, all right, yeah, this area. And we were like messing around in the living room, and I'm like, all right, this is your bicep. And then I try to like put him in like an arm lock. I'm like, right here, this is your bicep. And I try
Yeah.
to put him in an arm lock. I was messing around, and then
Yeah.
like I would squeeze his neck. I'm like, right here is the upper trapezius and all that stuff.
That's
I'm like,
awesome.
it does elevation of the scapula, and I was just messing with them.
If you grew up with brothers, you understand this. If you didn't, you're probably like, what?
But
That's
yeah,
awesome.
we were just messing around. But like at the same time, I was like learning. I was like going through what each muscle, where each muscle is located, the actions, and
By harming your brother in different places.
basically we were harming each other. But
Yeah.
but hooked from there, and then I kept taking all the other classes.
Now, was this anatomy class the one? Now, you gave me a little bit of some notes about your background.
Mm-hmm.
Was this the anatomy class that you worked with the cadaver?
No, that was a separate class.
That was a separate class. Okay.
That was that class was called Basics of Kinesiology, something like that. But the other one was Human Anatomy and Physiology 1, and there was another one that I took. We didn't do cadaver work. It was we took our final, and then our teacher said, if you want to stay after, we got a cadaver lab, you can come check it out.
Okay.
I was the only one that stayed for the final after. And she's like, "You ready?" I'm like, "Yeah." And there was 2, I guess, tanks. Each one had a body, and I'm just like, look, I'm like, are these real? I'm like, this is kind of freaked me out a little bit, but at the same time, this is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Their faces were covered. One was face up, the other one was face down, because there's a couple classes where people just do cadaver work. They actually cut up the skin, cut up the bodies, they open up all the muscles and whatnot. And I remember, actually, it's kind of freaky. So there was one that was face up, but he had a cover on his face. It was like a cloth. Mm-hmm. No, not the turn down one. There was one turn down. I only saw like the side of his face.
Okay.
And I'm like, his back was open, like the skin was open, so I saw the muscles. And for some reason, I felt like that body was internally screaming, like if it was like feeling pain, but like it just couldn't do anything. It was a strange experience.
Yeah, sounds like you were having like just like a surreal
Yeah,
experience
yeah.
with that. Yeah.
It was really strange, and there was a bunch of other things in the room. There was like a twin fetus in like a tank in one of the cabinets.
Fetus of twins?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There was still like, I think they were like conjoined, so like
Okay,
it was, like,
okay.
kind of halfway through its cycle. There was a fetal skeleton, which was kind of cool. What else was there? There was like brains. There was a bunch of buckets of different types of organs.
Yeah.
There was a brain. I was like holding on to it. I'm like, this is poking at it. This is a real brain.
Yeah.
And there was even another one with the spinal cord attached to it. There was this massive enlarged liver. It was like really big, and I'm comparing it to mine. I'm like, this is.
Did you pull your liver out?
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
compare 'em? It's about the same.
There was an enlarged heart, which was like the size of my head. I'm like, man, this is all
The
kinda
size of your
cool.
head?
It was an enlarged heart.
That's wild.
Yeah.
That's so crazy.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. Yeah.
Dude, I completely understand your experience with just having like almost this reality not quite being aligned because I took an anatomy class as well with cadaver, and they did not cover the face. And I remember I was having a completely different experience than everybody in the class. Like, it was just, imagine you've got your room, and then there's just this little smaller room off to the side, and there's just this dead body just on the table, right? Nothing covered, right? And I felt this visceral reaction to it being there, right? Like, my whole body was reacting to it. And even now, when you've been talking about that, I can go back to that point where I first felt that and could just kind of feel my neck tighten up a little bit, because it was just something that felt so wrong about just like a dead body being there.
Right.
But once you get past that, you can kind of get recalibrated and realize this isn't a live person. You check out the tendons and the ligaments, the muscles and the bones, but still, even then, that was a hard thing for me to go through, to be able to separate myself from the fact that was once a living person. It's kind of a trip.
I remember I didn't freak out right. I did freak out right away, but like immediately, I just started like poking at the body. You were freaking out, I'm sure, but like me, I was just like grabbing the tendons. I'm like, oh, like grabbing the tendons here. The finger was moving. I'm like, this is really cool.
If
And
you guys have seen Dexter, this is his origin story. when we hear someday the news
Yes.
headlines, it's just like, he's like, I loved holding brains. Yeah, I'm just kidding, man. I think it's awesome that you
Yeah.
love, like, I probably was. I mean, like I said, I was the one person who react that way, so I clearly was too sensitive to it, and probably should have been able to compartmentalize a little bit better, but
Uh-huh.
but yeah, it's fascinating, right?
It
And
is,
it just
yeah.
goes to show you how much goes into the human body, how complex it is. So I'd love to kind of wrap up the part of the ACE conversation because again, I find that interesting in that. So you took these college courses, and then from completing their fitness course, you were able to just take the ACE test.
No, so finished the classes. That took about 5 semesters or about a year and a half. But then from there, we had a voucher program. So there was 8 people from. Actually, there was a few of us. There was like, actually, I think about 8 people who wanted to take the exam.
Okay.
And the deal was, as long as you take the exam, my boss pays for it, or the college, or I think the college just paid for it, like $500 for the exam for free.
As part of like your course.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I studied for like probably 6 months total. After I graduated from the fitness program, my teacher handed me one of the newer textbooks. It was like thick hardcover textbook with like 900 pages, and from like there was only one chapter I didn't do. It was the musculoskeletal anatomy because I'm like, I got that in the bag, no problem. But like front to back of the cover, I just like read every single page. I took like probably close to like 100 pages worth of notes. Just like I'm still a little old fashioned, so like I write things down by hand. My hand like cramped up after like
yeah.
hours of writing every day.
Yeah.
But I took the exam 2023 of August. Passed. I'm like, all right, let's get this going. But took a while to get a client from where I worked at the time. It took like 6 months to get my first client.
Yeah, so real quick, I think that's great for a lot of people to hear. I love hearing it because, again, we obviously people who are in our training program and have worked with good trainers realize that, look at you talking about hundreds of pages of notes, your hand cramping up, right? Because you cared so much about the topics you were studying, right? And I think people who haven't necessarily had that experience of being a part of a great personal training program or had just a great personal trainer who represents the profession well, they may be thinking, whatever thoughts they have, right? Like a stereotype of someone on their phone on the floor or drinking a protein shake on the floor, maybe being not certified, right? And so being exposed to a story like this where, no, this guy took multiple college semesters, 6 months just to study to make sure he was comfortable with his subject matter, right? You're obviously someone who took it very seriously and, still do. So, you're not new to personal training here, right? Or actually, this is the second job as a personal trainer,
Yeah.
right? So after you went, because you were just getting into that,
Yeah.
after you got certified, then what happened from there?
So there was a period of just about 4 to 6 months of just not getting a client.
But were you said 4 to 6 months of not getting a client, were you already hired there?
Yeah, so the job I had there before was a fitness floor supervisor. It was a part-time position.
fitness what?
Fitness floor supervisor.
Fitness floor, okay.
So it was a massive gym. It's a great gym. So it was
It's like a rec center, right?
yeah, basically. Part-time position. I basically did like all the basic stuff like clean equipment, change out wipes, enforce policies, hand out equipment, all that stuff. A couple times people would ask me for a spot, and in that position, I worked there for almost 3 years as that position. And most of the time, I just watch people work out, and that's how I learned. One of the ways I learned form. I thought about like which muscles are being used. If you were to grab like I imagine like most of the time that was in my periphery, people doing lat pull down. So I just imagine like if you were to go wider, it targets these muscles. Go closer, it targets these muscles.
See,
all
that's
that type
right.
of
You have
stuff.
that affinity for anatomy,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
That's awesome. It's very important.
Yeah, it is. And
In fact, I would actually say having been in the industry for 12 years and knowing a lot of personal trainers over the years, it's probably a weaker area for a lot of personal trainers to like truly understand. Not that you need to know origin points and insertion points, while you're training someone. You basically just need to know here versus like it's on the greater trochanter
Right.
of, right?
Yeah.
So, but even that, right? I think a lot of trainers are lacking even in that, just like that full understanding of attachment sites, of the specific actions, right? Like sometimes there's many actions, right, of a muscle. Sometimes there's these synergistic relationships between other muscles, right? And I think personal trainers who have that aptitude and experience have quite an advantage over those who don't.
Definitely. I've noticed it from like couple other trainers or people who are about to become trainers from the program. I've noticed myself that one of the classes I was taking for the fitness trainer program, one of my teachers, I could tell like he was kind of a little bit like impressed by me the way I was. What was it? We were doing like this little presentation of doing any type of exercise. It was up to our choice. And resistance, so it could either be a tube or a dumbbell. And I remember doing, one of them was single leg extension, so seated.
Okay.
I wrapped the tube. It was on a chair. Wrapped the tube on the back leg. Wrapped it around my foot, and I was explaining like throughout. I did a lot. I think I did like way more explaining than I was supposed to, compared to the other people. But
You hear me say this all the time, right, Nico? It's better to over communicate than under communicate.
definitely, yeah. And I remember just the whole.
Better to make
whole
someone
semester.
roll their eyes than to make someone go, "What the heck? What are you? What am I doing?" Right?
Right. I just remember the whole class, or yeah, my grade was like basically perfect because I just like love really explaining an exercise. I really enjoyed breaking it down, and from there, that's also how I learned more into, again, like the attachment points and whatnot of a muscle.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you're working for Moraine Valley Community Colleges, their rec center,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay. And it took you 4 to 6 months to get a client,
Yeah.
right?
I
For
think
your first client.
Yeah.
So what was that experience like? I could imagine that being frustrating.
It was. I was like expecting like the week after I got certified. I'm like, I'm gonna get my first client. Can't wait, but didn't happen. So one of my first clients was a student. So it's a college gym and also community gym. So people like in the community, it was mostly retired old people who are either just working out there or are looking for trainers. There was also students there. Most students were there for just to work out. They weren't looking for a trainer. There was a couple who like actually wanted to learn how to work out, so they asked for a trainer. And my first client was a student. He was a lot of fun to work with. We did like just 10 sessions together.
Okay.
And I feel like I taught him a lot. We only went through exercises. We couldn't. That's as far as I could go at the time.
Exercises
Versus like teaching them like nutrition, because he would ask
Oh,
me.
I see.
He would ask me some questions, but like I wasn't like too comfortable. Like he was one of the things he told me. One of the first things he's like I had McDonald's for breakfast this morning. It was a McChicken. He's like, instead of the mayonnaise, I switched it for ketchup. I'm like, that's pretty smart, because that's cutting like 80 calories already. Mayonnaise is pretty fatty. But more of the exercise stuff was really fun. I really didn't know too much what I was doing at the time, because I'm like, I don't know what he really wants to do, because he was new to exercise. So I just kind of threw things at him: weight training, cardio. We were doing some challenges, like again plank stuff. We were doing. We had a track in the gym. He raced me. He decided to race it. I don't know why. He's like,
nice.
but that
and
that
you're
was a lot of fun.
competitive,
I
so
am.
you're
I'm
like, all right,
I'm
let's do
all right,
this.
He did beat me though, so That's
Oh,
sounds
okay.
good.
Well,
I mean,
you can admit it. I respect
yeah.
that.
But and then after that, clients started to build up a little bit. I've had like 10 clients total within a year. I've started getting people still around my age, somewhere between like 19 and 27. That group, and but then like there was way older people from like 60s to 80s, which was pretty different experience because of course each type of person has different types of goals or they have different types of issues they had to go through.
Yeah.
So I was very careful. I was very mindful. I really enjoyed doing the research of someone having a knee issue. I love looking into it. I'm like, okay, how could I get around this, or how could I even strengthen this person's quads or hamstrings? And I remember I had one client. She had issues with her knee. One knee was swollen. I think both of them were swollen, but one of them was more swollen than the other. So she was having trouble with range of motion. And I remember first time we were doing leg extension, we were doing single leg extension. So did the strong one first, really easy. Other leg was like barely any range of motion. Over time, I threw in more exercises for her to increase her range of motion. So we were doing things like split squat. We were doing TRX, single leg squats. Yeah, and
To go from being able to barely extend your knee to
she really
it's amazing.
it was really impressive. From like I worked with her for like 4 or 5 months, and I saw a major difference. I'm like, this is really cool. I was one of the reasons why she went from that to doing way better than she was before coming to me.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. And obviously, we already hired you, but I like hearing stuff like that because over the years, one attribute that I've seen be consistent amongst successful personal trainers is a constant willingness to learn and research on behalf of their clients. I mean, I've done a lot of certifications over the years and spent a lot of money, time on my own education. That being said, a good chunk of my education is just taking time out of my own day to research, right? You know, I do my best not to go outside my scope of practice, but if I have the opportunity to help one of my clients, I'm going to do it if I can, whether or not that's through nutrition, mindset stuff, more of the corrective exercise stuff that is kind of that bridge between physical therapy and personal training that you're describing. So the fact that you're already tapping into that is awesome, and I'm sure you made a. How did she react as she was able to do more and more?
She was pretty surprised. She was already a very fit person. She was like in her 60s, and she did a whole bunch of things outside of our sessions. She did like every weekend in Chicago. She would go on the river. She does I don't know if it's kayaking, like rowing with other people.
Yeah, probably kayaking.
Yeah. And she talked a lot to me about that, and she said how she had issues with her knee. Like she would have trouble like sitting into the boat, getting out of the boat with her knees. And she said over time, like it's way easier to do that. I'm like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And thank you. And from there, that just like really hyped me up to I know I can change people's lives. I can make them better from even simple things, just changing or increasing their range of motion, other things into like building habits into them.
I love that you said that because actually sometimes when, I'm doing these podcasts, I'm keeping in mind different things I want to ask you because we only have so much time, right? And one of the things I was getting ready to ask you when you finished that thought was, when was your moment that you went from being, I'm a student, I just started personal training, don't maybe have that much experience, to, hey, I can do this. I'm an expert. I know what I'm doing. Was that it?
That was it. That's
It's awesome.
Just a few clients later, I'm like, this is an amazing thing to do. This is really awesome. I love changing people's lives. Even just the small things. It's what really matters.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think especially one thing that anyone who's worked with a personal trainer, anyone who is a personal trainer, knows that being in a one-on-one interaction with someone for 1, sometimes 2, sometimes 3 hours a week, I mean, how often does that happen in somebody's life?
Not often.
Uninterrupted, right? Not often. So we really get to know our clients, right? And so I'm with you, sometimes it's just those little things of just, someone, it just happened to me just an hour ago. My client came in and, her hip was kind of bugging her when she started, because she's a newer client, and she didn't understand really how important warming up was to her workouts. I mean, she's almost 70 years old. She knows she has, a bulging disc in her spine, and it sometimes impacts her hip. And so I outlined her this workout, and I did include a general warm up for 5 to 10 minutes to get the body heat up, but she didn't do it. So when we were talking about how her hips aggravated from her workout yesterday, we were kind of just going through everything and go, where did we go off the rails? Come to find out, hey, did you warm up? She didn't, right? And so I get to explaining to her, like, hey, if you're chewing a piece of gum, when you're done chewing it, you can go like this.
Right.
But if you put it in a freezer, what are you gonna? Can you pull it anymore?
Probably
No,
break.
Probably just break it, right? So that's the whole point of a general warm up, is to increase your core temperature to a point that your tissues are more pliable, they're more responsive. And so even just something like that, right? That's not high level to you and me, right? But it's a little thing that pays off in a big way as far as keeping yourself healthy. So that was an awesome story, though. I love hearing that. So, it sounds like she was lucky to have you as a trainer, and you were lucky to have her as a client, because it probably changed both of you, right?
Definitely did.
So eventually, you came here, right? And so what were some of the reasons why you eventually left your last position?
So it's just lack of clients. I've had only like 10 within a year, so
Which is not a lot.
it's not a lot. And it wasn't even like they stuck with me. It was like they're here for X amount of sessions, and then from there they move on. I basically threw everything I could to help them out, and there was a couple that actually did a pretty good job on their own. But for the most part, they're not there to stick with you for a few years. So I noticed here, I was checking out your website, checking out the reviews. Some people are here for like years, and they'll continue to be here for much longer. And I'm like, this is even as I'm just like doing the other training stuff, working with Mike. I'm like, this is a really great place. Like every day I come in, the time goes by so fast. I really enjoy working here. All these other personal trainers are fun to talk to, all that type of stuff. So yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I just like, this is like every trainer's dream, just to work here. I really love it here.
Well, geez, dude. Oh, that's pretty cool, man. You're kind of leaving me a little lost for words, so I'm just gonna move on. So, one thing that I think is really cool about your story, in fact, this is probably going to be interesting. People are sitting here thinking, "Oh, look at this guy, Francisco, and how happy Danny is that he hired him and brought him on, right?" But I actually was ready to write you off.
Yeah.
Right? So after your first phone interview, you are someone who you would describe naturally as an introverted person, right? And
You got me talking for like the whole 30 minutes.
Yeah, right, as you've been not talking for 40 minutes, right? But you describe yourself as an introverted person, right? And on the phone, even Nico to an extent, right? In hindsight, when I did your phone interview, you're like the man around here. But at the time, even when I phone interviewed you, Nico, you're probably more introverted than everybody else here. Than maybe not Francisco, but the most of us, right? Yeah. Me, Josh, Ryan, Tina, Mike, especially. We're all.
He didn't believe me when I said that.
No, yeah.
Yeah, he's come a long ways. Yeah. But I've noticed that people who are a little bit more introverted don't always phone interview well, right? And it's not like our conversation didn't go well, but it's just nothing really stood out too much about that conversation to me. Now, what later stood out is that you have exceptional communication skills and organization. You know, I always tell people I'm interviewing, hey, reach out to me by the end of the, by this day next week, and no one ever does.
I thought it was a test.
No, it was not.
I thought it was a test.
It's more of a way for me to just kind of like say like, hey, I'm kicking the can. Maybe I do want to maybe I just want to say no now, but maybe I don't. I'm not quite sure. So I'll say, hey, let's follow up on Wednesday. It gives me time to think about it, right? Although I have been known at times to say no to someone on the spot and then tell them why their interview wasn't going well. Hopefully, if you're watching and that was you, hopefully you appreciated that. So most people do actually, right? I've done it to 2 people in particular. Anyways, I won't go down that rabbit hole. But basically, you were one of those people who followed up. Your communication from the whole interview process was great. So that was one of those moments where I go, I got to give this guy another chance. You in-person interviewed great, right? Your personality was able to come through so much more in person, right? And even now, I think people can see that. So I think that's interesting because most personal trainers, I would say, aren't introverted, right?
Definitely.
I would say more often than not, they're extroverted people who kind of feed off of that energy, right? And so I think this is a cool opportunity to kind of bring things back a little bit to your childhood, right? Because you mentioned that you describe yourself as a quiet, shy, introverted person for much of your life. And now that you've gotten older and learned more about yourself and had more life experiences, right, things have changed. So how have they changed? And why?
So let me try to explain in like stories. So first day I came in here to interview with Mike, and even on as I was working here, Mike never leaves anyone out. Like he will just walk up to a person, he'll just mess around with them. He's always like saying, hey, always joking. And it's kind of like two ends of it. Mike's over here, or working with Mike is over here, and then like my personal experiences, like as I was younger, is over here. Again, Mike loves people. He never left anyone out, and I've noticed that. And it's almost like a culture shock to me. It's like I've never felt this much attention, like probably most of my life. And him doing that, I was like, damn, I appreciate that from him. From the other end, school, not having too many friends. Of course, I did have friends, but like here and there, it's like my parents are always like, why you want to hang out with other people? Just like stay home. And I'm just like, because I never really had a social life as I was a kid, because again, they always kept me inside the house. Not that like I was like abused or neglected or anything like that, but they just didn't really understand that kids need a social life to really thrive as a person.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And so it sounds, if I could kind of summarize what you're saying, and what I think I'm hearing is that your upbringing was you weren't socialized all that much. You had some friends here and there, but compared to this experience of, let's say, Mike, for example, where he's making this effort to have people feel seen, that was not always your experience growing up. And it sounds like in some ways that influenced part of your introverted nature, right? For example, I've always thought that there are introverted people who are just naturally introverted, right? And in some ways, someone might describe someone as introverted as someone who just recharges by being alone, may not necessarily need as much of that connection or conversation, etc. But I've always wondered, what is that line, that distinguishing line between someone who is introverted and shy because they lack self-image, and someone who is introverted because they just are, right? Like they might be totally at peace with who they are, confident, and just still not necessarily need to talk to people all that much or interact with people all that much, right? But there's that other side of it where I think there are people who are introverted, but in some way that may be a mask for I lack self-confidence, right? Well, do you think there's anything to that?
Jesus, yeah, I think there is.
Yeah.
That just like hit really hard. I'm like, oh man,
Get some tissue needed.
damn.
Yeah.
I think that's very true. I think that's who I am. It's like at first when I was younger and even in high school, I just felt like people didn't see me, and it was a strange feeling because it's like although I existed, like just walking through people in the hallways, I feel like nobody really like saw me. Metaphorically speaking, like I always put myself hiding in the corner, like oh no one's gonna see me over here. When like it's the total opposite. The way you act, the way you walk, anything, all your actions, like people notice that. And if you're like this, hiding, trying to hide from people, it's like people see that. And I remember last year over the summer, the gym I used to work at, we did a summer kids camp, and it was like kids from like five. It was 3 different age groups, 5 to 7. It was like 8 to 9, I think, and then like 10 to 12 or 10 to 13. I think it was like those kids from like 8 to 9. No. It was 5 to 7. Older kids or younger kids. We were gonna like, I don't remember exactly what we were doing, but we always set up games. We had like this big room for it was basically did like a little daycare thing with them. It was a lot of fun. I can't remember what we were doing. Maybe it was like stations, or we were like splitting them into teams. Or I think we were like play soccer or something. And from one end of the wall to the other end, there was all these little kids. They were like huddled up with their friends. Like they all knew each other. They were talking to each other. And then there was still a few here, and then a little here. It's like, and now 1 or 2 here. There was one kid in the corner, and I saw him, and I saw myself. And I'm like, that kid needs a friend. And I'm like, that can't happen with kids like that, you know?
Well, that's awesome, man. And you know, you're making me tear up. You're making me tear up too. And
God damn it.
dude, it's beautiful, man. That's authentic. That's real, right? And then, you know, we live in a society where I think we hide these types of things too often, right?
Definitely.
Everyone wants to put on that everything is okay all the time, and that's bullshit, right? And the only way we get through these things and can live in a world that is where people are able to feel seen and able to experience the joy of community and connection is by being real with each other, right? And it takes someone like you to be vulnerable, to give someone else the confidence to be vulnerable and to reach out, right? So, you know, I respect the heck out of you, man, for doing that and getting real here. And one thing that's awesome about this is it doesn't necessarily need to be that little kid in the corner to want to reach out to them, right? You know, that's one of the beauties of our personal training or our job is that we may be one of the few times our clients do feel seen in their day-to-day life, right? Even people who you wouldn't think that applies to, right? Because they may be the boss at work and then they get home and then there's just stuff to do and helping out their kids and and then by the time the end of the day comes around, where's time for me, right? And so even that person who you would think wow, look at it, they have it all together, they have a successful career, they have a family, even that person has a little kid inside that needs to be seen,
Right.
that needs to be cared for, right? And so I've always loved that side of personal training, that this can be a time that fitness is wonderful, right? I always kind of, I play around with a slogan, something to the degree of like, fitness is our tools, people are our passion, something like that, right? And I truly mean that because, again, I've always loved that side of personal training, that, we do have those uninterrupted connections with people for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours a week, where we can get to know them, right? We really can get to know them and really focus on them, have them be the focus, right? Understanding them, what makes them tick, how to get them a great workout, how to encourage them. And it's a blessing for both sides of it,
Definitely.
right? Because I'm blessed to understand and be a part of their life and be brought into their life and help them, and I get to be a blessing in turn to them, to help with them with their fitness and to be there for them when they need me. So it's a partnership, right? And that's the bottom line, right? Humanity's a partnership, right? Like, we need each other.
Definitely. I hate when people say that you don't need other people. Like, that's the complete opposite. I hate that so much. It's like, I had a couple of relationships, girlfriend. Didn't go so well because I've tried to explain to them. I probably did a horrible job anyway. But like, hey, we want each other, but at the same time, we're gonna also need each other. And it felt like it didn't really go really through on that. I don't know. Maybe didn't understand it. Maybe I didn't explain it well. Maybe I like talked so much about it. But it's like when you have a union of marriage, for example, of a man and wife, it's like you need each other. And the way Jordan Peterson explains it, it's like you have two options. You can either go be alone in life, like have that bachelor life, or you can be shackled to someone. It sounds like in a bad way, but it's kind of true. Where it's like life is like a kind of like a dark hallway, and then when you're together, it's like there's a light that fills up that hallway, and it's like you can go through life like that together, and you always need someone. Always need someone.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, and that's, and the good thing is that we have an opportunity to be the change we want to see, right? We can be that change we want to see. And so, Francisco, I think it's obvious that you have a big heart, and you also have that passion for fitness, for exercise science, anatomy, etc. Those two things together, you're going to be able to make a huge difference in people's lives, man. So I'm excited for you, and I'm excited, 6 months, a year from now, talking again, right?
Yeah.
Just how things could change for you. Hopefully you'll have had more than 10 clients by that point.
Yeah, I hope
promise
so.
you will. But seriously, man, I'm very excited for you. I appreciate you coming on
Thank you.
today and
Thank you for having me.
sharing your story.
Appreciate it.